It's another thing to do B2B SEO and get leads from your website, but it's a ninja thing to do B2B SEO and get qualified leads through your website. And by qualified, I'm talking BANT qualified. Budget, do they have the money for this thing? Authority, are they actually able to make a purchase, or is it the intern's cousin's Labrador? Need, do they actually need the thing that you're selling? And time, are they going to buy this thing in a reasonable time period? And by the way, this stuff also works for B2Cs that have either a long sales cycle or are selling to people that have a high level of expertise. Let's go and get some sick high quality B2B leads. Whereas B2B can sometimes be as simple as search a product, see a product, buy a product, some B2B sales cycles can be much longer. In fact, according to this study, 75% of B2B sales cycles are longer than 4 months. Now, of course, one of the benefits of this means that there could potentially be lots of touch points during that period, which means that you can influence your customers more. But we'll come back to that in just a minute. Now, why is this sales cycle so long? Well, often it's because the person in charge of making the purchase is going to be doing lots of research and comparisons along this journey, meaning they're most likely to be doing lots of different searches on Google or their favorite search engine for different bits of information, and this gives you a great opportunity to get in front of them multiple times. One of the most effective B2B SEO strategies can be to do comparison content like this HubSpot page, which compares Salesforce Sales Cloud versus HubSpot Sales Hub. This page is targeting potential customers that have typed in things like Salesforce Sales Cloud alternatives or Salesforce Sales versus HubSpot Sales, so it can be a great way of influencing that key decision point. But we're going to explore content in a bit more detail later on in this video. Another thing that we're going to have to consider when we're doing B2B SEO is that the person we're getting in front of isn't necessarily the decision maker. This means that any content you're producing needs to be accessible to different levels of knowledge. The researcher might have more of a base level of knowledge compared to the end user, so your content needs to reflect this. Of course, that doesn't mean that advanced content should be ignored. Once the researcher has shared their findings, end users and decision makers are likely to want to do some of their own research, so you need to make sure that you also have content that targets that level as well. We didn't say this is going to be easy. Let's do an example. Let's say that someone junior in HR has been tasked with going to find some new HR software. Well, they might search for something like HR software or HR software for small businesses. But once they've handed over their long list of options, the ultimate decision makers might be searching for things like, does HR Soft include employee satisfaction features? So as we're going through this process, we need to keep in mind those two potential target audiences and how we can satisfy both of them with each of the steps that we're going to be going through. Alrighty, like my morning beauty routine, any good SEO campaign starts with great foundations. And of course, keyword research is often the foundation of any SEO campaign. But when we're thinking about B2B SEO, we need to be a little bit careful with keyword research. One of the most common mistakes we see with B2B SEO keyword research is that the company will target the highest volume phrases rather than looking for really specific phrases, which might have much lower search volume, but actually might imply a much more qualified potential customer. A lot of our most successful B2B SEO campaigns actually don't generate huge volumes of traffic, but they generate the right traffic, and that's really important. Now again, remember our two potential audiences, the researchers and the end users. Let's go back to our example of HR software. This is a very broad term which is going to have relatively high search volume compared to more niche phrases. But if we think about the target customer for this and the likelihood of converting, it's a bit lower than something like, for example, employee engagement software. And this keyword is more specific, so it's likely to have a much higher buying intent, but it's also going to have much lower search volume. So if you're looking at keywords purely based on the number of searches per month, you might be inclined to go for HR software, whereas actually if you're selling employee engagement software, going for this more specific phrase might be what you need. Now, of course, once you're ranking for the more specific phrases, then by all means, let's start targeting some of these more competitive and broader terms. Because remember, if we're selling to a researcher in the early stages of this buying process, they might not know the specific phrases to be searching for, so we do want to make sure we got our bases covered. But if we're talking purely about qualified leads, then often you'll find those come from the most qualified and selective keywords. Of course, if you're not sure which keywords you should be targeting, a great thing to do is just talk to your sales team, find out what the best quality customers ask for when they're on the phone or typing via email or live chat. In B2B, it can often feel like there's new terminology and new acronyms that are coming along all the time. And one thing I'd be careful of here is understanding whether it's actually customers that are using this terminology or just other people in your industry. One of my very first SEO campaigns almost a decade ago now was with a company that did corporate massage. So they would go into people's offices and massage their employees. Now, everyone in this industry was targeting the phrase on-site massage, and competition was really stiff. We worked tirelessly to get the client ranking for this phrase, only to find out that the traffic coming through just wasn't converting. When we looked into it a bit more deeply, we realized that actually this was a phrase that was used by this business and their competitors, and most of the search volume was coming from them searching for each other all the time. Actually, their potential customers were searching for a completely different set of keywords that really very few businesses were optimizing for. So you've got to be careful with terminology and make sure that you're targeting people at the right level of expertise. When we're doing B2B SEO, we also need to think about the commercial intent of any keywords that we're targeting. Let's say, for example, that you're an accounting firm and you're targeting self-employed clients. You might build a page on your website and get it ranked for a phrase like self-employed take-home pay calculator, with the logic being that anybody who's searching for that is going to be self-employed and at some point may need your help with their taxes. So your game plan would be to convert them on the website and then sign them up to an email list and maybe send them more content over time to build a bit of a relationship with them so that then they eventually become a customer. But let's be totally clear, this type of visitor is going to have a much lower conversion rate than somebody who's searching for something like how to do a self-employed tax return, who is right in the middle of their pain and will be much more likely to need help now. Now, of course, you're not going to get leads from any of this traffic unless you have a really good call to action. We're going to talk about conversion rate optimization just a bit later on. But while we're talking about tax calculators and accountants, look at this great example of a call to action in the middle of a blog post targeting this technical term, Form SA 800. This is going to be searched for by someone who is a potential customer of this business. And if you scroll down, you'll notice that they have these nice, big, colorful, attractive CTAs actually embedded in the content. This doesn't feel distracting from the page, and it's a real value add because it's tailored to exactly the topic that the visitor is landing on this page for. Mwah! And this leads us on to another tip, which is to match the intent of the visitor that is coming through to your page. So if somebody is searching for a definition for a term, for example, you want to give them the definition of that term, but you then want to sort of take them on a bit of a journey where maybe you give them the definition of the term, some tips on how to optimize that term, and then a call to action for your business to help them improve whatever metric that they're measuring. Of course, that's not only going to help improve the number of conversions you get, but it's also going to show Google that this page is meeting the searcher's needs, which should help it improve its ranking over time. Now, it's fairly common for us to find with our B2B SEO clients that actually they have pages on their websites like this that could be performing much better if we re-optimize them and tweaked them. We call this SEO page boosting. With one client that we did this for recently, we doubled the number of conversions that old page was generating for them just by doing this type of page boost. Not bad for a little page boost. Now, we've talked a bit about how content can impact SEO. Let's go into that in a bit more detail. But first, if you need some help with your SEO, whether or not you're B2B, then the team here at Exposure Ninja would love to help you, and free of charge. We have an amazing service called the Free Website and Marketing Review. You may have heard of it, where we'll take a look at your website and give you some suggestions on how you can improve its ranking and the number of conversions that it's generating for you. We'll also take a look at your paid advertising strategy as well if you want us to, as well as your social media. This service is completely free of charge, but not everyone is eligible. So if you want to request your free website and marketing review, you need to go to exposureninja.com/review. If you're eligible, you'll receive your free website and marketing review as a video from us, usually within a few days. We email this to you. There's no hardcore sales pitch or anything like that. It's a really useful guide that can give you some suggestions based on your website and your digital marketing. You can then implement this stuff yourself or work with your existing agency, or if you want to work with the ninjas, then we'll be happy to have that conversation. So go to exposureninja.com/review to request your free website and marketing review today. All right, one massive consideration for B2B businesses doing SEO is that if you're going to actually turn visitors into leads, your content needs to do a fantastic job of establishing your credibility and meeting that searcher's need. There are a few aspects of this. The first is the target audience that you've defined. We work with a lot of companies through our Brand Accelerator program, and we notice that this is something that they really struggle with. They think that they're clear on their target audience, but actually when you talk to people inside the business, there might be a few different versions of this target audience, and nobody's really agreed on exactly what the perfect customer looks like. Or they are all agreed, but that person actually isn't the target audience that's bringing them in the most money. So we work with them to help them define their target audience and work out out what's most important to that audience. That way, when they're producing content for their target audience, we can get a really great resonant response from that audience because we know we're meeting them exactly where they are, talking about the things that are most important to them. Some of the most common mistakes that B2Bs make in this area then is producing really detailed, complex technical guides when actually their target audience just doesn't have the level of knowledge required to understand this. It's completely wasted and goes straight over their head. Or sometimes if they've been working with a basic agency before, they have the opposite problem where they're producing really basic entry-level content, but their target audience is much more specialist and they look at this basic content and say, is this a joke? And don't convert. So a great exercise that you can do here is to go and find the content on your site that is converting best, and then have a look at how that compares with the stuff that's just really not converting. And I'm not just talking about the content that's generating the most conversions, but the content that has the best conversion rate. That tells you that there's a decent match between the traffic that's coming to the site, the topic on the page, and the CTA that you're offering. Now, as an example of how not to do this, here's a blog post on the Monzo website. So Monzo is a digital bank. They've created this blog post called How to Create a Customer Segmentation. I'm not sure what our editorial team would think of that headline. And from reading this, two things are abundantly clear. Firstly, that they've created this post to try and attract business users to their website, so that they can sell them business banking accounts. But the second thing that's abundantly clear about this post is that it's unlikely to ever generate any conversions whatsoever. Whilst it's detailed, there's just no CTAs here. We've got their site-wide sign-up thing, but they haven't linked the fact that this post is about marketing and the sign up is for the business bank. So what they could have done is have a CTA for a mailing list sign up, which is something like the business growth list or the business growth club from Monzo, which loads of business people would sign up for, and then they'd try and upsell them into bank accounts. But they've just not tried any of that at all. In fact, the only CTA is for their careers page. But why would a potential Monzo candidate be searching for customer segmentation? Now let's compare this to another blog post, this time from SurveyMonkey, and we'll see how they've actually linked the CTAs right to their products and service. Customer segmentation made easy, that's the topic of this post. Identify and understand your ideal customer with SurveyMonkey audience, which is their product, and you can click to learn more about it. Seamless! They even have secondary CTAs echoing throughout the page. Mwah! Remember, the CTAs on the page need to match the search intent of the visitor and be relevant to the content. I know I've said this before, but they just tell me to keep repeating it until you do it. The next thing we need to think about is, does your content stand out in your industry? Now, going back to this Monzo post, it's very generic. I would guess, if I had to, that ChatGPT was involved at some point during this process. And of course, it's pointless publishing content if it's not actually going to resonate with your target audience. And of course, if you're selling to a B2B audience with high level of expertise, it's even more important that you sound native and highly authoritative about the topic that you're writing. One common mistake that B2Bs make here is that they write in a very corporate and boring tone, and it's just not engaging at all. You don't just have to be a B2C company to use a very personal tone of voice. This is a B2B video and I don't know how to speak corporate, and somehow you're still here. But the important thing is to make sure that any content published on your site matches the tone of voice that your business has settled on. We have an internal editorial team here at Exposure Ninja that checks every single piece of content produced for every client against each client's tone of voice guidelines to make sure it sounds native to that business and not like generic ChatGPT rubbish. The third consideration about your content is making sure that it's not overcomplicated. A trap that a lot of B2Bs fall into is making their content too overcomplicated and technical because they want to show off the technical abilities that their team has. I get it, but sometimes the technical product team actually aren't that aligned with the expertise level of your potential customers. And in fact, the sales team and the product team often have a very different level of technical know-how, and they kind of need to because your prospects and the technical team have a huge difference in technical know-how. Not always, but often. So remember that not everyone coming to your site is an expert, particularly if you're publishing very top of funnel informational content. They might not even realize that they've got a problem. Now, of course, I'm not saying you have to dumb down your content or oversimplify it so that you sound too basic to have credibility. That's not it at all. But what I'm saying is that you need to be able to communicate in a way that audiences with different levels of expertise can understand. Now, remember, we talked about the fact that B2B sales cycles can often be pretty long. And this is both an annoyance for your sales team, but it's also a massive opportunity because as people move through that sales cycle, they're going to be searching for different types of things. What we like to do with our clients is profile these target customers and build a bit of a funnel with some of the keyword research targeted at different stages of this customer journey. That means that we can target people who are just in the problem aware stage, so they know they've got a problem. We can target people who are solution aware, so they know to search for different things, but they might not know the one that they want. And then we can target people with really high commercial intent who've already committed to your product or service or are comparing it with others. By having different types of content and different keywords targeted at each of these different stages, it means that you get to exert your influence on your potential customers as they're making this journey and as they're learning about the product or service that you're selling. All right, another really important aspect of B2B SEO is making sure that your site is still optimized for search. Sometimes when you get a website built, you have it optimized and it ranks nicely. But over time, what tends to happen is people add different bits to it, or someone changes some pages around, or someone deletes a whole bunch of pages, or they move pages to a different URL, or they add a new directory or a subdomain. And over time, sometimes the on-site SEO on a website can actually deteriorate. Sad times. That's why we typically do health checks and on-site SEO checks right at the start of any SEO campaign. These things aren't fun or sexy. Optimizing page titles and meta descriptions, making sure your load times are nice and snappy, making sure all your key pages are being indexed. All of this stuff is really important, but it's not necessarily sexy or glamorous. In reality, it's just table stakes. If you're going to rank, you need all of these things in place. SEO is too competitive these days to really rank with a poorly optimized site. It's not uncommon for us to be sent a website to optimize by a client who wants to rank it. We look at the design and say, actually, do you know what the best thing that you can do for this site is actually to reconfigure the design. If you've had your site for a few years, it may be time for an upgrade. Or you might even have a beautiful site, but it's just not set up for conversions. It's not designed to turn visitors into leads or sales. And of course, you can request a free website and marketing review from the team here at Exposure Ninja if you want an impartial take on the state of your site. Just go to exposureninja.com/review to apply for your free website and marketing review now. Okay, so let's talk about getting backlinks to your site in order to increase its authority and help your ranking. Yes, backlinks are still important for SEO. But for B2Bs, they can also be a great way of getting in front of potential customers. For example, in this content piece, top CRM features and functionalities list, we can see Salesforce getting a nice juicy backlink. Well, that's great because it helps their SEO, but it's also great because the sort of people who are reading this post could be Salesforce potential customers. And as we see people use generative AI for search more and more, we're seeing pages like this show up more frequently in generative AI searches on tools like ChatGPT and Google's SGE. When these tools rewrite the content on a page like this, they will be drawing out some of the recommendations in this page. So that's another benefit of getting featured on pages like this. Here's another example. Which CRM is right for your business? You'll notice that this lists a whole bunch of CRMs. And if I'm a CRM company, I want to get my software featured in this article, both for the backlink, but also that recommendation, which remember, it might end up being the basis for the tuning of some of these generative AI models. If you need help with this, we have digital PR teams at Exposure Ninja that do exactly this type of thing for clients. So drop us an email through the Exposure Ninja website. One final but really important tip for generating high quality leads from B2B. And that is to think about the call to action forms that you're using. Now, we see companies make two opposite mistakes in this area. The first mistake is that they use forms that are way too long. They ask for loads of personal information that they don't really need. And it's a real turn off for potential visitors who feel like they're having to fill out an entire mortgage application just to download your guide or get in contact with your team. This can suppress responses even of highly qualified leads. But the opposite can also be an issue where you only ask for a very small amount of information. This then gives your sales team a bit of a difficult time because they can't as easily qualify the leads that are coming in. This can also mean that you get very unqualified leads that the sales team have to waste time and energy chasing up only to find out, hey, they've got no budget, no authority, they don't need what we're selling, and they're not in the mind for a purchase. And then they won't invite you to the Christmas party. Not that you wanted to go anyway, hanging out with salespeople. I'm joking, I am a salesperson. Now, of course, what can often happen is you start with a simple form, and then as the leads coming in don't appear to be that qualified, people then add more and more and more fields to this form, overcomplicating it and making it long and arduous for people. So it's a good idea every so often to have a bit of a spring clean. Talk to your sales team and find what are the one or two fields on those forms that really positively indicate that this is either a high quality lead or a low quality lead. For example, do you really need company revenue, or does actually number of staff better correlate to a good quality lead? Does it make sense to ask people what their budget is, or do they just lowball you or highball you anyway, so you can't rely on the answers? This will require some testing, but you're a B2B marketer, so testing is your middle name and your favorite hobby, right? Of course, if you do all this, you should see the number of qualified leads coming through increase, but that might not mean that the total number of leads that you generate increases. Some of our best B2B campaigns have actually seen a drop in conversions, but those conversions have turned from being completely irrelevant to being highly qualified. So if you're measuring the success or failure of your B2B SEO campaign purely on the number of conversions, it's really important that you can get some other qualification metric from your sales team. For example, using sales qualified leads and marketing qualified lead tags to denote which ones are the highest quality, so that you as the marketing team can continue optimizing to get those really beautiful peachy leads rather than just filling the sales team with rubbish that they got to sift through. So I hope you found that useful. Don't forget to request your free website and marketing review from the team here at Exposure Ninja. Now, if you want some help crafting the perfect CTA that never fails, watch this video. It even includes my baby daughter Luna. Until next time, see you soon.